Yeah, thanks, Jason, and thanks to all of you and our media for the coverage this year, which we could have given you a little more, but appreciate everything that you do to cover this team and to share the happenings of what we're all about with our fans. Thanks to our staff as well for everything that they give our organization. It's a lot of people that work tirelessly to help us, have the successes we've had. And certainly to our fans. Not the ending to this season we want. There's some disappointment that comes with that, certainly, but at the same time, really proud that we've reestablished, continued to maintain, however you want to put it, a winning culture here. This is something that this season, the disappointment that comes with it, some of that's related to it being our fourth consecutive trip to the postseason. If this season happened in 2018, 2019, there's a different feeling than it being our fourth consecutive trip and our earliest exit of the four. So for us, we're really proud of that winning culture. The expectations that come with that, our expectations are higher than the season that just concluded here, and we embrace the questions and the things that follow that. Want to take a quick moment to praise Cashy here and the Major League staff for everything that they did this year, this season, from start to finish, from the lockout, and the quick spring training to the injuries and everything along the way. It's a season I don't think ever was fully in sync the way we would have liked to, and certainly there were more injuries that we encountered on both sides of the ball than what we've ever experienced. And it would have been easy. You look at the days that we lost, the injuries, the key contributors to the last 2 years, players like Zanino, Kieremeyer, Brandon Lau that helped us have the best record in the American League the last 2 years. I think they were on the field together for maybe 12 games with Wander, I think is what it was, our up the middle group. You look at how injuries can affect wins and losses for teams across the league. I think of the days that we lost in total, the top 10 teams in injuries and days lost, I think 5 of them finished below 70 wins. The Dodgers were the only one to make the postseason other than us. And I think that's an incredible testament to Cashy, to our staff, for keeping this group afloat. And y'all were with us there in July when things didn't look all too good. And they found a way to get these guys continuing to show up, continuing to get better. We got a little healthier and, again, didn't end the way we wanted it to, but to even have the opportunity to play postseason baseball with all that didn't go our way this year, this staff deserves a lot of credit, as do our player personnel people and everyone involved with assembling a roster and the fluidity that existed with that roster all year. The group we had in the postseason here at the end, I don't have the exact number. I'm sure, Neil, you can follow up with a question and a clarification for me in a bit, but nearly half this roster that we had in the postseason wasn't even with us in camp. And that's a credit to all the people that are working as hard and as well as they do with identifying options for us to bring onto our roster, both from a development standpoint as well as acquisitions from outside our organization. So thanks to many there. Trying to shift to looking ahead, I believe that our recent success is not a fluke. There's plenty of reasons to see optimism when we look ahead. I think the biggest one to point to with respect to that is our pitching. Our pitching's in a really good place. Our pitching and our defense are reasons that we've continued to be competitive, but we got a small preview of what it could look like having McClanahan and Glass now front of rotation, and those guys deserve a lot of attention. Those are 2 guys that have been in Cy Young consideration the last couple years. To have them both healthy and in the mix leading a group gives us a lot of reason for optimism. And when Rasmussen, Springs, arms like that, and the job that they did this year, I don't want to call them afterthoughts, but are behind those front 2. That's a special top 4 as we look at it, and very confident in the numbers we have, the bullpen, the back end, the depth, all of it, that we're going to have a really special staff next year. And as long as that's in place, we're going to be competitive and we're going to be good. Our position player group, obviously, certainly at the end, the offense, the run scoring, not where we expect it to be. Still believe that this is a very capable position player group. Injuries got us pretty good this year, certainly in the way they have it in the past, without much of a common theme to connect those injuries together. No reason to think that they'll continue into the future the way that they did this year. This is a very capable position player group. We have young talent that is getting better. We saw Isaac Paredes take a really big step this year. We expect other young players that had their first licks and opportunities this year, last year, to take similar steps as we move forward. That'll help this group out. So a big thing for us is just trying to figure out the right veterans, the right established players to put around our younger players. That's something that we battled in the middle of this season. We had to rely because of the injuries on a lot of young players, but believe that they'll all be better for that as we go forward here. So expectations continue to be high. A disappointing ending, largely because of the culture of winning that we've established, and we're going to stay at this. Like I said, be proud of that winning culture and try to do everything we can and really obsess over what we can do better to win that last game of the year with one of these opportunities we're going to get moving forward in the postseason.
Some of the deficiencies, maybe specifically left-handed hitting, obviously injuries were part of it. Some of those guys will be back, but do you view it as you need to make some moves to supplement that too, or how do you balance all that?
Yeah, I think you saw the challenges this year. I think it was July-ish, Cincinnati-ish, whenever that happened. I don't remember the exact dates, but yeah. You don't want to put too much on too many players that haven't established themselves in the big leagues yet. We're always going to be dependent on young players, but when they look around and there's not someone there that they can point to or speak to that has some been there, done that, it can be hard. It's hard enough to find your footing in the big leagues, and we saw that firsthand. So a lot of humbling experiences for our players, for ourselves. I think ideally we find a little bit of a better balance. Maybe not we don't want to ask too much of too many that haven't yet established themselves, but you want to give them those opportunities too. So exactly how that all comes together is something that we'll spend some time here over the next month, especially sorting through. We're always going to be dependent on young players, but we've got to find a way to fortify that group with players that have more underneath them. So certainly the power this year. You talk about Brandon Lau, the 39 homers from a year ago, Zunino, the 30+, or those two in particular. I mean, that puts a real dent in the power department of this group. You talk about the benefits, all their experience, being on their postseason clubs prior. You feel that. That was a big thing that even David Peralta, the acquisition down the stretch, provided that wasn't visible in a stat line. And then, to the left-handed hitting versus right-handed pitching, yeah, I don't know if we've ever had a club that has struggled so much against right-handed pitching as this one did. And that's something we got to find a way to improve. And we faced a couple of good righties in the postseason and struggled with them.
Eric, I'm just curious. You mentioned injuries quite a bit in the opener there. That was an issue the year before as well. What, if anything, do you feel like you guys can do to address that, to be less of an issue moving forward? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think the pitching side of it, there's some inherent risk to injuries when it comes with pitching and pitching at high velocity, and that's a balance that you gotta try to make the most of it. We've had pitching injuries for some time. I don't think that's unique to us, but that doesn't mean that's not an excuse for finding ways to keep guys healthier. That's something we need to do. I would separate the pitching health concerns and injuries that are there in the position player group. I don't believe the injuries we had within our position player group this year, I don't think we've experienced something quite like that, and more confident that that's an anomaly than it is something that we would expect to continue. But you also got to take a hard look at things to make sure that's the case, and there's good reason to believe that. But yeah, this year I think what made it particularly difficult was the position player injuries and what we faced there, and believe that moving forward that's something that can be remedied and addressed and improved upon.
Kevin, just with what the staff has been able to give you throughout the entire season, there's Shane, of course, which I'm sure will be a separate question, but with Drew and Jeffrey, what they were able to do for your team throughout this season as people to be plugged in who might have been relief pitchers maybe at the beginning of the year, what was it like to see their progression throughout the season and their outlook towards next year?
good question. I think you can make the argument that those two names might have been the brightest spots of our season. You know, you come in with the thought, well, Rass was a starter, but wanted to manage his workload and be very aware, mindful of how he was responding start to start. And then whatever that day was that we decided to take Springsy and build him up, I don't think either one of those guys could have done more than what they did. And it gives us reason to be excited that now they have the foundation, now they have the workload. They can prepare themselves as starters going into the offseason, throughout the offseason, and come into spring training. But we couldn't have drawn it up any better, thanks to them. Their performance, the way they bounced back, the routine that they got into, and without their innings that they provided, we're not getting into the postseason.
Eric, you mentioned that, you know, half of this roster in the postseason wasn't even there at camp. Half of it might not be there next year either. How difficult are the decisions that need to be made in this?
I think every offseason, as long as I've been here, you're going to have some turnover. You know, that's just part of it. We've got a sizable arbitration eligible class this year. There's decisions we'll have to make within that about how to best manage you know, this group and what makes the most sense with the 26 spots we can bring back next year. But there'll be a time for that. I think the optimism. Glasnow's here. You know, that was a really big deal. It was a sizable investment. That speaks to where we believe we are competitively. You know, it's a shorter term deal, but it's a sizable amount. Like I said, the pitching, we're in a stable spot there. We can have confidence in the pitching we're going to be bringing back, the starting pitching, and then it's on us to figure out the position player group and how to make the most of that to try to sync it all up. But those are, I don't think the challenges this winter are unique to anything we've experienced the last several years. I think hopefully that each passing run at this, we learn a little bit, we get better, and puts us in a stronger position to win a World Series moving forward.
Eric, have you guys learned anything more about Pete Fairbanks' situation from Saturday? And also, could you speak to filling, since you talked about the staff filling the role of you know, who comes on for Stan for next season?
Yeah, Pete, I believe should be fine. I don't know if there's much more right now. It seems like a very manageable situation, and I think even the staff, if you don't mind, I could probably put this one to Cashy.
I just saw Pete walking out with some boxes, so he could carry boxes. That looked good. Confident that he's going to be fine. As far as Stan, you know, we talked about it when we announced his retirement. Appreciate everything that he's done in a Rays uniform, and how special he was to all of us, certainly me, to have that veteran guidance as a young manager coming in and his experiences to work with. So we are going to miss him, and I think, you know, in the coming days we'll probably have an announcement. Not quite ready yet to do that.
Hi, John.
Just Kevin, along those lines, the rest of the staff, do you feel pretty confident and comfortable with that group?
Very, very much so. We'll see how the off season unfolds, but if we have that entire staff coming back, coming into spring training, I think we'll all be very excited. They work well. They come into the ballpark. I give them a lot of credit. I think they do as much at times as the players of kind of setting that consistent vibe to come in, try to find a way to get better, and then win a game that night.
And then, Eric, just going back to that position player group, I know you can't forecast this, but some years you kind of go into it thinking there will be a lot of turnover, some years there won't. Do you feel like you need to make some changes to get that more consistent offense?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's the questions that we've marked to ask ourselves and to try to develop better answers over the next several weeks than I think the one I'll be able to give you now. But there has to be an open-mindedness to that. You know, spoke to Z's injury, spoke to Kiermeyer's injury. They're, you know, free agents to be here. You know, Brandon, we expect to be back, to be healthy, and to have no lingering effects from the struggles he had with his back this year. But yeah, I don't think you can ever. I don't think it's in us to just stand pat and assume things will get better. And I think there's an acknowledgement that our standards offensively, we want to raise them, and that includes taking a look at the group we have and figuring out ways to do that. So.
And Eric, you mentioned Kevin Kieremeyer. Just what's the process going with figuring out his situation and the potential for him to return next season?
Yeah, it was nice to see him in Cleveland and to come out and to support the group and do that. And that just speaks to the commitment he has to this organization and the care for this group, along with some of our other injured players there. But we'll talk here and see where his head's at and how he's feeling. Everything with the rehab seems to be going well, but that's something that before being able to provide a whole lot to you and to our fans, there's still conversations I think to have with him about where he's at and what's important to him moving forward. But we'll have those conversations in due time here soon enough. But can't say enough about him and all he's meant to this organization and the opportunity, that final homestand, even to thank him. We could have gone a long time with highlights of plays he's made and things he's done on the field, and perhaps a few moments off the field as well. But he's meant a lot to us, and we'll make sure we treat him with the respect he deserves when it comes to that.
And then, Kevin, just how hard, another aside from that, are you seeing the bunt emerge in baseball again? And do you see teams utilizing that a bit more to get more presence on the base paths?
We just went from home runs to bunts. You know what? Any season, it can get long and tough, but you know that the young players that we had came in and did everything they can to prepare. We talked about the left-handed bats. I think the league in general has started throwing right-handed pitchers that are, better equipped to handle lefties. They've recognized that. Everybody in baseball has recognized that. So you don't see those big split right-handers. But to answer your question about the lack of home runs, I'm confident if we get a little healthier and have a little bit more healthy, consistent contributions, and you tack on another year of experience for some of these players, whether it's Isak, Randy's third year or fourth year, whatever it is, Wander, we're going to start driving some balls more consistently. As far as the bunt, I personally don't see it, but we'll talk about it more in spring training, I guess.
Eric, you mentioned Zunino being a free agent as well. Do you view catcher as an area of need potentially, or how much did Christian Bethancourt maybe change the equation on that?
Yeah, he did a really nice job. That was an acquisition made well in advance of the deadline, but at a point we thought Z was looking unlikely to be back, and Bethy did an incredible job just getting better. Frankly, it's been a journey for him to reach this point, and you never know exactly what you're going to get. But we got a collection of guys that it's their second, third opportunity. They've been overlooked. They've dealt with a lot of adversity in their career and have had a more winding path than most. He certainly had that himself, and just came in and did a heck of a job on both sides of the ball. Was receptive to Hoove and our staff and all that they asked him to do. Kyle, from a game planning standpoint, got better blocking the ball, has always been able to throw, better receiving, followed game plans really well, and certainly for the position, I think did more than enough offensively. So couldn't have been more pleased with what he gave us. On that front. So we'll see how that all plays out. But obviously, we've long talked about Z and how important he's been to this group, and the success we've had. And him being back there is also something that we missed as well. So we'll see where it goes. Like Kevin Kieremeyer, we'll talk with Z. We'll have conversations and see where his head's at, what he's looking to do. Everything with his rehab's going great, and if there's something that makes sense moving forward, I'm sure we'll talk about it. And like Kevin, he's been so critical to our success. We'll treat him with the respect he deserves, given all he's given us.
Other questions? Probably one for each of you. Is if you compile your options for the next season offensively, does the shift ban factor into that and more of a contact-oriented approach maybe or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the contact-oriented approach and the importance of using the backside of the field might be more relevant when you can shift. There's a lot of open space, that you can exploit, and if you have the ability to maneuver the ball around the field. I think with the shift no longer being allowed and some of the limitations on positioning, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think it'll likely benefit quite a few of our hitters. Certainly the left-handed ones we're talking about, but everything's relative. It's all relative to the league, and if we're all benefiting the same, then probably doesn't mean a whole lot at the end of the day. So we'll get into that. We've already got a group of staff that have invested time in trying to understand how any of these rules modifications should affect our approach in terms of how we assemble a roster, and then how it affects the individual approaches of our players. So I don't think it'll be terribly meaningful in terms of, at the end of the day, how it adjusts our behavior, but it would be a little premature to say that with any sort of certainty because we're still working through it.
I think, Kevin, just to run through two of the kind of higher profile guys, how would you assess Randy's season and then Wander's season?
Randy, 2030 is tough to do. He backed it up. He went 2020 as a rookie, now 2030. And the irony is that I think we would all say that he can do more just because he's so athletically talented. So good season. Looking forward to see him come back in and improve again. Wander, I can't wait to see what next season brings. Wander faced a lot of challenges this year with the injuries. For a young player that had come up through the minor leagues, through our system, that had never been hurt, to deal with the groin, hamstring area, and then the hamate bone. I mean, I honestly think it just kind of buckled him. Like, this kid wants to go out and play. He's always played pain-free. He's always, kind of played with his hair on fire, and he didn't know how to manage his workload. So get him healthy, keep him healthy, and I'm betting he's going to take off.